So Crash the Chatterbox is not a book about eliminating all your negative thinking. It's not 7 steps to a positive mental attitude. It's none of that, because in my life, I find that there's no way to turn off all the chatter, all the negative thoughts, all the doubt, all the discouragement. It's always there. It's always gonna be there. It's always been there. Yet God is always speaking. He's still speaking. He speaks into my weakness. He speaks into my insecurity. He speaks into my fear. He speaks even when I'm feeling condemnation. He speaks even when I'm discouraged. He's always speaking. And this experience is all about learning how to tune into that voice. If God is always speaking, it's not a matter of me getting him to speak into my life. It's attuning my heart to his frequency so I can hear what he's been saying all along. So Crash the Chatterbox is built on 4 confessions. God says I am, God says he will, God says he has, and God says I can. Now, those 4 confessions are meant to counteract the 4 different areas where the chatterbox attacks us the most frequently: insecurity, fear, condemnation, and discouragement. Now, I decided to record these video teaching sessions that will supplement the teaching in Crash the Chatterbox here in this factory. They actually used to manufacture plastic here, and I didn't know a lot about plastic manufacturing, still really don't. But I like the image that these are incredibly high temperatures in this factory, producing a substance that is molded. And I thought about how this factory represents our hearts, our minds, always producing thoughts, either molded by God or molded by the world. And this is a experience where we're going to dissect those thoughts, think about what we're thinking about. As Paul said in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. Taking a thought captive means that I get to detain it. When a thought comes into my mind, I don't just let it come in my mind and do whatever it wants to. I take it captive. And when I take it captive, I interrogate it. I want to find out, where did this thought come from? Did it come from God? If it came from God, then I'll follow it. If it came from God, then I'll act on it. But if it didn't come from God, I don't have to let this thought terrorize my life. Now, maybe you're like many of the people that I've interacted with as a pastor, as a minister, and your mind and your life has been terrorized. Your family, maybe for generations, has been plagued by these thoughts. They seem to come from nowhere. It seems like you can't do anything with them. But once we expose the lie, that's the first step that we have toward embracing the truth and the freedom of what God has spoken over our lives, the better word, the last word. My prayer is that in these video experiences, you'll be able to bring some of the questions in conjunction with what you're reading in the book. Bring your own personal experiences to the forefront, and then let God's truth speak to you. Let his words supersede what others have said, what you've been telling yourself. And you might just discover that there's so much more God is calling you to do than what you're currently experiencing. As we get ready for these sessions, I want you to think about, what are the great things in your life that God has intended to do that up until now you've been unwilling or unable to press forward in because of the lies you've believed? What is this costing you? What's it costing you in the area of your joy? What's it costing you in terms of your initiative? What's it costing those around you? People that God has called you to impact, people that God wants you to influence. I'm excited about us getting in the factory of our hearts and our minds, exposing the lies, confessing the truth that God says I am, God says he will, God says he has, and God says I can. When we learn to make these confessions and when we apply them, not just understand them, but actually put them into practice, God's voice becomes louder than all the others. The chatterbox, the opposing voices, the voices that tend to crowd out and drown out the voice of God, it won't be silenced forever, but it will be subdued by the promises that God has spoken. So I look forward to these next several weeks. I pray that God will really speak to your heart, rewire the way that you think, rewire the passions, rewire your attention so that you'll hear what he's saying. And when you hear what he's saying and you respond to it, you're absolutely unstoppable. Let's get into this teaching now. I can't wait for what God's going to do in our lives.